Good afternoon. My name is Harry Allen. I'm a 2020 visiting artist here at MIT through CAST, the Center for Arts, Science, and Technology. I'm here to both introduce and interview my colleague DJ Rob Swift, who is also a 2020 visiting artist via MIT CAST. We're here working on Harbinger, a project to construct a 7-person turntablist crew, a hip-hop DJ septet, if you will. Next, we're debuting it in almost exactly 170 hours. Next week, Thursday, 8 p.m. in this very room. We expect that you'll be there. I first met Rob Swift over 20 years ago when he sent me a copy of his sophomore album, The Ableist. I was then, and remain, struck by that work's cover. It's an image of Swift, one tinted cyanotype blue, his head hovering low over the platter of a Technics 1200 turntable, the katana of a DJ master. Rob's eyes appear heavily lidded and fixed on the sapphire needle of the machine, locked, as though he's been regarding it for hours, or perhaps even days. What exactly is one seeing here? Perhaps the artist is attempting a mind meld with the device, hoping to synchronize the theta waves in his brain with the object's far cruder circuitry. Or maybe he has long left behind the DJ's prerogative to touch the platter with hands, and now seeks only to stir its circumference with his thoughts. Whatever the goals of that moment, what is clear is that to Rob Swift, the turntable borders on being an entity of veneration, one to be approached with only the highest motives of spirit and heart. So, it is with that as the basis of his worldview, he crafted the tenets of his philosophy, a pentad composed by the values of resourcefulness, originality, tenacity, appreciation, and guardianship. Friends, we're honored today to host DJ Rob Swift. What he'll discuss are the confidences that not only have made him the artist he is, but ones that he's assured will vitalize your own existence if you embrace them and do not relent. Let's welcome Rob Swift. Rob, thanks for doing this talk, and thanks for everything you're doing at MIT.
Yes, sir. That intro was crazy.
Thank you.
Hopefully I'll live up to that.
You already have. That's what that album cover made me feel every time I look at it. It's amazing.
Right on.
So why did you construct this list of tenets, the 5 that we spoke about: resourcefulness, originality, tenacity, appreciation, and guardianship? Why did you construct this list of tenets, and what were you trying to create for yourself?
I think throughout my career, from the early days of learning this art form, being taught from my brother, to teaching others now here at MIT, those tenets pretty much reveal themselves. It's not like I sat down one day and thought to myself, I'm going to create these 5 commandments or these 5 laws. I think going into this lecture today with you, Harry, and knowing I was going to speak in front of the MIT students and whoever else showed up, I wanted to make sense out of what has defined my career and my approach. And those 5 tenets, I've basically kind of constructed my whole concept and relationship with DJing by. So the tenets pretty much revealed themselves to me over time, and I think
when you look at your career and your work, these issues keep coming up, you find.
Exactly. At some point, I always go back to one of those tenets, whether it was the tenacity, I'm 47 years old right now. So it's not like, and I've proven myself to the masses, the DJs that are out now, the DJs that I came up with, but I still practice like no one knows who I am.
Your place in the history of DJing is secure at this point.
I feel it is, but I don't let that make me feel as if I don't have to train. And I don't feel like I'm in a position to be comfortable and come here and talk about what I've done. I need to always stay in a mindset of what can I do moving forward, what new stuff can I experiment with, and that's where the tenacity comes in, the staying focused, the training, the practicing.
And even being here at MIT to do a project like Harbinger, which is different than one that you've done before. With the Executioners, it was you and 3 other DJs, but this is nearly twice as many, and you're not in the career, in the outside, helping to steer them and move them along. So there's more of that challenge again, I guess, that you're trying to prove yourself.
Exactly. Always pushing myself, always figuring out a way to find a new way to introduce this art form to people so that it stays fresh and it doesn't die out.
So let's walk through your tenets one at a time. Resourcefulness is the first one. How does resourcefulness most or best manifest itself in the work of doing your art?
Let's think about Grounds of Theodore. You guys familiar with who Grounds of Theodore is? Raise your hand. Good. Majority of you guys. For those that aren't familiar with that name, Theodore Livingston is the person that decided to move the record back and forth and let you, the audience, hear it. And we call that scratching. Now, before Theo, if you were queuing up a song, you'd pick up the needle, drop it on a vinyl, look for the part that you want to play, and that movement of, that back and forth movement of the record as you're looking for that sound would occur in the headphones that the DJs would wear to cue up the next song. Theodore accidentally made that movement as he was queuing up, he was cutting up a song called Apache, making a mixtape in his room. Music was too loud. His mother storms into the room and starts yelling at him. And as he's queuing up the part on Apache that he wanted to drop in, he wasn't doing it in his headphones. He was doing it out of the speakers because he got startled by his mom. And when he went back to listen to the tape, he got to the part where his mom started yelling at him and heard himself cueing the song, moving the record back and forth, finding the spot out of the speakers, and he stopped and thought to himself, that sounds cool. I'm gonna start doing that for the audience, not just for myself. And he gradually refined that movement and made it make sense in the context of playing music. And that's what I mean by being resourceful. Someone else wouldn't have thought, and keep in mind guys, Theodore was 12 years old when he stumbled across this genius way of altering sound on a turntable. He was 12. He wasn't even a teenager. But he was resourceful enough to figure out how to hold the record so that the needle wouldn't skip, what to do with regards to helping the record slip more. Back then, turntables came with this thick rubber mat that you would place the vinyl on top of, and
to keep the record still.
To keep the record still. And for my DJs here, if you try to scratch on a rubber mat, the platter's not going anywhere. You're not going to get clear sounding scratches.
And if I may, of course, when I say still, I mean still relative to the rotation.
Right,
of the
exactly.
Yes.
And so if you try to scratch on one of those thick rubber mats, the platter's just going to stop moving because your hand is on top of the record. There's a rubber piece.
Bushing, basically.
Yeah. It's like a cushion underneath the vinyl, and then that rubber causes the platter to then become static. It's not going to move. So resourcefulness, thinking to himself, all right, I'm gonna take this rubber platter or rubber piece of felt, for lack of a better word, off. Now, but the record can't rub against the actual platter of the turntable. What can I do? I'll get Bounty towels from the kitchen, and maybe I'll put 3 towels on the turntable and cut off the ends so that the ends don't stick out, and make a circle. And now let me try to put the record on. Oh, that feels more slippery. That's being resourceful. And for me, that's the first tenet of DJing and hip hop in general. But with regards to DJing, to me, that is the first most important tenet, is being resourceful. And nowadays, it's interesting because all of the gear, with the exception of the 1200 Technique turntable that I'm tapping right now with my right index finger, these mixers, the laptop, it was all designed for you to not have to think. It was designed for you to make things easy for you and make things convenient. So now, the resourcefulness that I feel a DJ needs to have is sort of in danger, because if you're using a laptop, a lot of those questions that you'll have, a lot of those little obstacles that you might experience go away. And now you
smoothed out.
Right, exactly. So resourcefulness for me is the most important thing that a DJ must have.
You know, Rob, it's so profound what you just said. And tapping into what you just said, I also had another insight about resourcefulness that I'd like to share, and it's just this. In Theodore's case, and in so much of invention and discovery, mistakes are the thing that get us to the next step. But resourcefulness also means being open enough and having the mental or emotional resources to capitalize sometimes on a mistake. I'm thinking perhaps of, for example, Charles Goodyear, who it's been said was experimenting with the vulcanization of rubber, how to make it stable and not stretchy, and a piece dropped on a stove, and the heat vulcanized it. Now, this is what he was trying to get to, and this might be an apocryphal kind of story, but then he picks it up and says, this is what I need. Now, he could have just said, oh man, what another mess I made, and cleaned it off, or he could have just been embarrassed and left it there. Theodore also had to have the resourcefulness to say, that's an error. And when you think about it, I mean, the entirety of hip-hop is based on a sonic error. Even today, like if you have a movie and they want to signify that someone has said something wrong, you'll hear the sound of the turntable being needle being dragged across a record to signify, oops, that was a dumb thing to say. And so our culture is built on that sound, that thing that's normally not supposed to happen. And Theodore had to have it in him to say, I can use that. That's good for something. And that requires resourcefulness.
It's amazing.
Even the ability to see mistakes and to utilize them.
Right, yeah.
Let's go to your next quality, this tenet, and that's originality. Why is originality valuable?
Because you want to stand out, and you want to be honest and genuine and true. And I feel like I'm old enough to remember listening to the Park Jam tapes of Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, the Cold Crush Brothers with Charlie Chase and Tony Tone, Jazzy J and the Jazzy Five. My older brother would sit me down and play cassette tapes of the actual Park Jams that would take place throughout New York City, mainly in the Bronx, New York. And those tapes are interesting because when you listen to them, everything is happening in real time. And remember, they're using analog equipment, right? So they come up with a routine. Let's say the Cold Crush Brothers, Tony Tone, the DJ, and Charlie Chase, who was also the DJ for the Cold Crush Brothers. They had two. And they would come up with a routine and perform that routine live at a Park Jam. Then someone would be at that Park Jam with a radio recording the actual performance. And then they would make a copy of that tape for their cousin who lives in Brooklyn. And then that cousin who lives in Brooklyn would make a copy for his friend that lives in Manhattan. And then that friend that lives in Manhattan would make another copy for his other friend who lives in Queens. And that friend might be my brother.
And then that friend might make a copy and give it to his friend who's in the army, who's going over to Germany.
Exactly. But in the city, in New York
Yes.
City, people would dub these tapes and it would just kind of like make its way through the 5 boroughs. And now you're hearing this group, the Cockroach Brothers, perform this routine, and now you want to do the same thing with your friends and get out there and showcase your ability to rap and your ability to scratch and keep a beat going. But how are you separating yourself from those, in this case, the Cockroach Brothers? How are you separating yourself from the original origin of that style? How are you separating yourself from the people that influenced you to want to rap and DJ and scratch? So originality is important because if everyone starts to copy each other, the art form will die. And the way the art form has evolved is by people seeing something that they like, learning it, but not settling there. See, if you settle in that area of like, okay, I learned this style of rapping, or I learned this scratch technique, and you settle there, then you're not moving the art form forward. So originality is important. And back then, we had terms like biter. For anyone, whether you were a b-boy or a DJ or a rapper, if you copy someone else's style, you'd be called a biter, and that was an insult that, I mean, you would just, you basically, if someone called you a biter, you were shunned, and you couldn't really be a part.
You were a leper.
Yeah, exactly. So, or for example, for graffiti artists, there's a term called toy.
Yes.
So if you either copy someone's style or your style just isn't evolved, they call you a toy, and no one wants to be around you. No one wants to be creative with you. So the whole idea behind originality and pushing what you've learned or the styles that have influenced you forward is so important. And today, in 2020, it's interesting because there's just so much access to material content that a lot of these tenets that we're talking about right now are lost and forgotten or not even thought of because everyone just wants to keep up with the next DJ or the next rapper. So originality is so important. Being original, being true to yourself, taking something and figuring out a way to redefine it and push it forward is crucial.
Well, that's a great answer. But I want to push this a little further because there's a paradox kind of built into hip-hop that I want you to address. Now, there's a quote that's famously attributed to Pablo Picasso that good artists copy, great artists steal. Now, as it turns out, Picasso is not known to ever really have said this. It turns out that the quote comes from W.H. Davenport Adams, and he was a 19th century journalist. And in his review of the work of poet Alfred Tennyson, he came to a conclusion about the role of copying in art because he was looking at the way Tennyson was using the work of earlier poets. And he said this was his maximum, his I guess you might say summary of this idea of copying. He said that great poets imitate and improve, whereas small ones steal and spoil. Great poets imitate and improve, whereas small ones steal and spoil. How can we talk about hip-hop in terms of originality when to a great extent it's built upon lifting, literally, earlier musical ideas and reconfiguring them?
Well, we have a lot of MIT students here, and if you're assigned a 15-page paper in psychology or whatever, and you plagiarize a majority of the paper, what's going to happen? Your professor's going to fail you. So, and in as much in the same way, in the street, with regards to hip hop, the University of Hip Hop, you can't plagiarize. You can't take. It's not allowed for you to take something from someone else and not expand or stretch that thing, that concept, that idea. It's the onus is on you to improve on and not just appropriate. You know, so these are all,
and in fact, to a great extent, the better you do that, the more rep you have
exactly
for being able to do that, and the way you do it, I guess you'd say.
Exactly. And those, in the case of DJing, which is what I am, a DJ, the ones that stand out, the ones that have longevity, the ones that make a name for themselves, the DJs that earn the respect of other DJs are the ones that took a style, took an idea, and made it better.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So
let's move on to tenacity. This is the third of your tenets. In what kinds of practices should a DJ be tenacious?
You just said it, practice. You gotta train. And that, for me, I use the word tenacity in the sense of you have to be rigorous about training and practicing and cultivating your style and not getting comfortable. The last battle that I entered, I'm pretty sure the majority of you guys probably weren't even born. The last battle that I entered was in 1992, the DMC. A year before that, I entered my first battle, the same competition, the DMC, and I placed third. And third wasn't good enough for me. And so I trained for that whole year and entered again in 1992. In between that, I was entering competitions, and due to politics, I was losing battles, getting bumped out of brackets early because the judge had a mentee in the battle, and politics and all that stuff. But that didn't stop me. I was tenacious. I kept going. I kept practicing. I kept training. A full year later, after my first battle, I won that same battle that I placed third in 1991. By 1992, I stuck with it and won. So I got my DMC jacket, right? But I didn't stop there. Fast forward to 2020, you know, we're close to 30 years, yes. Right? And I still develop new routines. I still train with my partner, Mrs. Sinister. I still get influenced and inspired by the younger DJs, the creative ones, the ones that are pushing the art form forward. When I train with my students who want to compete and get into battles, I find myself coming up with ideas and then giving them these ideas so that they could kind of improve on those ideas and incorporate ideas of mine in their sets, because I'm retired from battling. I don't necessarily feel the need to battle, but I do feel the need to continue improving and continue cultivating my voice on the turntables. So the next person, or the average DJ, after they win a battle, and I'm sure the DJs here know this, like there are DJs that in the late 80s, early 90s were hot, so to speak, and popular and well respected, and a lot of DJs will have that conversation of like, what happened to this guy? Where are they now? What are they doing? It's because they win the battle and then they get comfortable and they feel like, all right, that's it. But for me, it's about a journey, not to sound like corny or cliche, but through DJing, there's been this journey of self-discovery, like discovering who I am, discovering just myself, you know, and discovering these tenets, believe it or not. DJing kind of helped led me to these tenets that I talk about.
It reminds me of stories from journalists who would go to visit the great jazz saxophonist John Coltrane at his home, and they would hear him running through scales, and his family members said he would do this for hours, 6 hours a day, running through scales. And this is a man who could reorganize the scale in his sleep, you know, in his worst dreams, just do things people haven't even imagined. But yet every day he's still there trying to master this metal in his hands, you know. So it seems like the great ones know that practice never stops.
Never.
Appreciation, and this is profound. So in chapter 5, verse 18 of his first letter to the people of Thessalonica, the Apostle Paul says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Give thanks in all circumstances. So as a person aspiring to Christ's ideals, I take this to mean literally all circumstances. Good ones, bad ones, delightful ones, or painful ones. What is the worst experience you've had, either as a DJ or in your wider life, that you deeply appreciated, not later, but while it was happening?
Wow, that's a crazy question.
Crazy good or just crazy?
Crazy cool.
Yeah,
Crazy cool. Good. I'm thinking, and I'm like, I've had a lot of low moments in my career. It hasn't been smooth sailing. Wow. I think the lowest point that I've been at was, it was like 2012, so not too long ago. And honestly, like, I don't even remember, this is how low it must have been, because I don't remember what I was necessarily into. Like, I know what I'm into right now: teaching, lecturing, passing on this art form to younger DJs. I know what I was into in the early 90s, competing, building a name for myself. I know what I was into when I first started, 12 years old, studying the art, following my brother's lead. I know what I was into after I started competing, recording music, whether it was doing scratches for Akinelli, touring with Akinelli, then forming the Executioners with Rock Raider, rest in peace, Mr. Sinister, Total Eclipse, recording our own proper albums. But like in 2012, in May of 2012, with the exception of like, I used to appear as a guest teacher at a DJ school in New York City and doing just random shows here and there, I honestly can't really think of like something worth talking about that I was into at this time. Now, I was turning 40 years old. It's May, my birthday's in May, and I kind of sort of had like one of those
life crisis.
Yeah, like I remember just thinking to myself, it's my birthday, don't really have like much going on, like that's like worthwhile. Like I'll do a show here and there, and I'm appearing as a guest teacher at this DJ school here, but it's not like any of that is truly notable. And I had like $50 to my name in a bank account, like $50. And I remember I was thinking like fuck, like how am I gonna pay the maintenance? Like I own my apartment, so I was thinking, how am I gonna pay the maintenance and the mortgage and my car note and the electricity and the cell phone bill by June 1st? And it was like the first week in May. And I opened my laptop and I saw an email there from ESPN. And it was a guy named, my boy Kevin from ESPN. And I did some work with ESPN like a few years before. I did like a teaser commercial for a Yankees Red Sox game. And in the commercial, it was myself and Total Eclipse. I had like Yankee gear on, although I'm a Met fan.
Yes.
And Total Eclipse had the Boston, he was repping the Boston Red Sox. So we did the commercial, and this was like a couple of years before this crazy day that I had. And fast forward to, it was like the first week of May, I'm like sitting in my boxers on the couch, I open my laptop to email someone to figure out what move am I gonna make next to try to generate some money to make sure that I get these bills paid in June. And I see an email from my boy Kevin from ESPN, and he's like, hey, we're working on a new show called Unite, and you know, I really like the work that you did on that teaser commercial. We'd like to know if you're willing to drive up to Bristol, Connecticut and not because we feel that we definitely want you to be, basically it was sports talk show, but you know how like Jimmy Kimmel, the music is the roots? They had me as the music. So I was like the DJ playing instrumentals and scratching under highlights. So I kind of was the soundtrack to the shows, and it was an hour show. And they were like, yo, could you drive up to Bristol, Connecticut, and we want to just do like a test run with you in the studio with the host to see how it feels. And I drove up there like about 2 or 3 weeks after that day of like, is this what it's come to? Like, is this what my career has come to? Like, I have $50 in my checking account, you know, and I'm wondering how am I going to pay my June bills, feeling sorry for myself, and then I see that email, and since then, like, it's just, I'm not going to say it's been smooth sailing. I've had my dark times still, but I think that moment helped me realize that A, I have a lot to be appreciative for, right? Because I was in a messed up situation, but I had plush carpet underneath my feet. I was sitting on a leather couch with this cool TV in front of me, and I made it that far.
And you also had a computer to get the email.
And I had a computer to get the email. So it's like I made it that far, and I have all this stuff around me. Why wouldn't I keep going? Like why is it gonna end here? And that email, I think, was like sort of like God smacking me, like, dude, it's gonna be cool. Don't worry about it. Like, I got this, you know? So went to ESPN, and they were like, yeah, we want you to be the DJ for Unite. And so for a year, I was the DJ on a sports talk show on ESPN. And if anyone knows me, you'll know that sports and DJing are my life. Like, I love those two aspects of, you know, just being alive, waking up and turning on.
So you didn't have to think long about this?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. And not that I do this for money. Trust me, I do not do this for money, but the pay was pretty good too. And so I went from having $50 in the bank to having 2 apartments. My apartment that I own in New York City, and then I rented an apartment in Connecticut, and I would drive back and forth throughout the year.
Dude.
And you know what? After a year, literally 13 months after I read that email, they canceled the show. And I'm still here. See what I'm saying? So it's like another dark moment, another hole I'm in, but that was 2013, it's 2019, 2020. It's 2020 right now, and I'm still here. So appreciation, yeah, like appreciation for my talent, appreciation for this gift that I feel has been given me by God to survive and to touch people. Appreciation a lot of appreciation for the DJs that came before me that inspired me to do what I do on the turntables, to learn as much as I've learned. Like this art form, man, like if I wasn't into DJing as a kid, I don't necessarily know if I'd be here today, because a lot of my friends were into like stupid stuff growing up as a kid. And I didn't necessarily have the best influences. So, you know, I had friends that like I know we're at a university and stuff like that, but I'm gonna keep it real for you guys. Like, I had friends that would like rob houses and like tell me to go with them to rob houses and all that crazy stuff, you know? But DJing kept me indoors, safe, being creative. And so now if tomorrow something were to happen and again I have $50 in the bank account, I know I don't have to resort to robbing houses. I know that my talent will take me past that obstacle and I'll triumph, you know? So yeah, man, I'm super appreciative, trust me.
What's so powerful about what you just said is this. We're here at one of the most elite schools in the universe. And the people who go here work very hard to get into this school. But here's the catch. Most of them come from places where they are the best at what they do, the smartest. And then they get to MIT and find out that they're surrounded by a bunch of other people who are also the best, and surrounded by others who are the best. So you struggle and you work to get good grades and get through here and get out and get a good position. And you have a lot to be thankful for. But no matter how good you are getting into a place like this, one thing is assured. You are going to probably bottom out at some point in your career. You're going to bottom out either in terms of your movement and progression, or you're going to bottom out in terms of your mind, like your focus, or your family. And it's coming. It's coming. If it doesn't come, it probably means you're not working hard enough.
Exactly.
So the idea is that you have to, as you go through life, and whenever these obstacles come, you've got to realize that this is a part of living, and that difficult situation you got through was a key part of building who you are now. It's not something that just went by. It's something that how's the saying go? That which does not kill me only makes me stronger. And so I think it's really important, that thing of being appreciative, of saying like, whatever is going on right now, it could be a lot worse, and I'm thankful for the things I have, because really when you think about it, the things that you have are probably for the most part things that were given to you. Even if you're really very smart, you're not smart because you made yourself smart. You're smart because you were born smart. You were gifted with something that made you smart, and then you applied it and maximized it. So that appreciation is really key, and it's something that more people should do. Whatever your situation is, be thankful.
Yes, definitely.
The last tenet is guardianship. Racism makes it very hard for black people to hold on to, control, and or maximally benefit from anything. And any special things we make in our history of exploitation and what's now called appropriation demonstrates this. Given this fact, what do you mean by guardianship, and how should it work in hip-hop?
If it wasn't for my brother passing on what he knew of this art form and this culture, I wouldn't be here today passing on all this information to you guys. So that's what I mean by guardianship. Once you've exercised that tenacity, that tenaciousness that I talked about earlier regarding practicing and developing your voice on the turntables, developing your skills, competing, seeing where you rank amongst other DJs throughout the world, and you accomplish your goals, it shouldn't end there. Then what you do is you apply that same tenacity into passing on the art form, so that the art itself continues to have longevity, and so that someone else could, you're creating a platform, an avenue for someone else to then find themselves. So guardianship in that sense is very important to me.
So what it means in one sense, and this addresses the issue of racism, that no matter how little you have, you can give something to someone else. You can help someone else learn or acquire knowledge or information, and it's then that person's job to do the same for someone else.
Yes.
That's guardianship.
That's guardianship, for sure. And that's where I'm at right now. That's the phase in my career. I mean, I jump in and out of the 5 tenets, you know?
Sure.
One day I'm just like, yo, I just got dissed on Facebook, I'm gonna go practice and record a video and like show this dude like I still got it. You know, like sometimes I'm in the tenacious practice, I'm still the shit mode. And then other times I'm like, you know, I've done that already. This person needs help, they wanna understand how to beat juggle or scratch. These are techniques that define this art form. All right, let me help them. Let me invite them over to the house and teach them what I know. So I kind of like move in and out of those 5 tenets, but as far as guardianship is concerned and passing on this art, that's the one tenet that I always come back to, you know, because I want the art to grow, I want it to continue to evolve, and I say that through the periphery of my vision, I see this laptop, right? And I think to myself, like, I want it to grow and move forward in the traditional way. Or, let me rephrase that. I get that technology is here to stay. It's only gonna get more advanced, and I appreciate that. but I don't want the authenticity of the art to be lost. So I feel like because I come from an era, because my pedigree is what it is, and I come from an era where I learned on vinyl, and I understand this art form from its genesis in a way that maybe someone who buys a controller today, you know, they're just so separated from that period of time. So they may not have an appreciation for like going to scratch a record, but figuring out a way to not make that needle skip. On a controller, it's not gonna skip, you know? So they may, someone now that buys a controller and wants to learn and uses a laptop to play music and scratch on and beat juggle and all that stuff, won't have the appreciation for, I did this on vinyl and it didn't skip. And I still have control of the turntables. And I'm making the turntables do what I want them to do. So passing on that, you know, so that they really understand what this art is about. You and I were talking, Harry, I think we were talking about this last night, and like I just feel like DJing has become more of a popularity contest. You know, I'm gonna post this video of myself to IG so that I could get likes and increase my followers. And I'm just thankful that I didn't come up in this, you know, age of like social media and laptops and computers and all that stuff, because like for me, DJing is just about like getting to know yourself and growing and being creative, like tapping into the God in you, the creative. To me, God is creativity, right? God creates. So it's like, and we all have a piece of God in us. And I feel like when you get on the turntables and you start to scratch and come up with like crazy patterns or beat juggles that if you just let the record play from beginning to end don't happen, that you're making this happen on the turntables, that's you connecting with that supreme force in you. I'll just say supreme force. So when you do that, that is what I feel your purpose is to experience yourself. That's what your ultimate purpose is on this earth. So whenever you, in this case, when you scratch, beat juggle, play music, create a set for a party, a wedding, create a 1 minute, 2 minute, 6 minute set for a DJ battle, you're experiencing yourself. You're going through the ups and downs of like being creative and doubting yourself, but then overcoming that doubt and figuring out a way to conquer that scratch that you couldn't conquer. I'm looking into the audience and I see some of my students that I've been teaching here at MIT over the course of this week. I'm doing like a 2-week workshop with them. And all of them, day one, I mean, there's one student that never even touched the turntable, never held a needle. But she DJs. She DJs on controllers, but never worked on turntables. I remember I asked her, so you DJ? She's like, yeah, I DJ. I was like, you ever use the turntable? She's like, no. And I was like, okay, cool. So now I get to pass on a new experience to you. I get to show you how to do this DJ thing the authentic way, you know, actually picking up the needle, placing it on the turntable. And I remember like the first day, she accidentally hit the needle and the needle skated across the record. And you know that sound, that's not a...
That's like I said before, that's a sound somebody did something wrong.
Exactly, and we both jumped and looked at each other like, all right, we don't want that to happen again. But now she gets on.
Isn't it interesting that the turntable builds that in?
Yeah.
Like it gives you a sound that when you do something wrong,
And
it's going to sound wrong.
It reminds you to not do that sound. But now, what is it? This is actually after 24 hours. I got her for the first time yesterday, I think it was. And today, she picks up the needle, puts it on. You know, like, that to me is cool, seeing that, and then knowing that she's gaining confidence and growing, whether she realizes it or not.
And that you were connected to that process.
And that well, connected or just being able to
witness it.
Witness it, right, exactly, and kind of just cheer her on and cheer the rest of the students on. Like, here's this scratch, and I do it for them, and they're looking at me like what? And then they start doing it like within a half hour, and I'm like, you see, you can do this stuff. You know? So like I tell people, I teach because it's a cool opportunity for me to get someone to conquer something that they think they can't do. You know? So that to me, beyond the techniques of DJing and, you know, like there are schools that teach this art, and you and I were talking about this last night, but they approach it from a perspective of, okay, we're gonna learn how to baby scratch. First, grab the record. Now move it back and forth. I'm gonna play a beat, you guys scratch over this back and forth. Okay, now let's move to the next scratch. And it's all technique. This step, that step. A lot of these schools don't take the time to...
No wax on, wax off.
Nah, right, yeah, like I'm teaching you this because eventually you're gonna be doing something else that's crazy, you know? And seeing them get to that point. A lot of these schools, they just kind of teach the technique because it's like, I call it like an assembly line of DJs that they have, and they just kind of want to just keep the money rolling, get students in and out of the schools and stuff. But for me, it's I teach for a completely different reason, you know? It's because like, yeah, like I get to see a student not know how to pick up the needle, and then after 3-4 months, they're creating DJ sets.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's just a cool process to witness.
Rob, I feel questions are kind of bursting from this crowd that we have here. So let's go to the audience and see what questions, as I often say, questions, comments, suggestions, or complaints you may have. And then after we hear from them, I have one final question for you before we close. So who has a question, a suggestion, a comment, or complaint for Rob Swift or for me?
Don't be shy. Okay, I think we're good. Let's get out of here.
I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Who was your biggest influence as a DJ?
So the question was, who was your biggest influence as a DJ?
All right. I'm going to answer that question, but like in a roundabout way. First, I have to give credit to my father, because my father was the first DJ in my life. Like before my father, I didn't know what the term, I didn't even know the term existed or what the term meant. And I just have fond memories of my dad DJing weddings, birthday parties, New Year's Eve parties, DJing in churches, halls. Sometimes my brother and I would help him pack the equipment, and he'd drive all the way to New Jersey, which is like hour and a half drive from where we live in New York City, and he'd DJ for friends. So I have to definitely give an honorable mention to my dad, because he was the first example of what a DJ does. And then I gotta give a shout to my brother, because again, my brother sat me down and explained to me DJing from the lens of a kid immersed in hip hop. My dad wasn't a hip hop DJ. My dad actually DJ'd salsa and merengue. I'm Colombian. My dad is from Chocó and my mom is from Cali, Colombia. And I was born in New York City in the 70s. So my dad, it's not like my dad was connected at all to hip hop. But coincidentally, the gear that DJs like Grandmaster Flash, Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa were using were turntables. And my dad worked at a factory, and we grew up poor in a one-bedroom apartment, roach-infested apartment, one bedroom. My mom...
The standard issue.
Yeah, the standard issue. And my mom and my dad slept in a room, in a bedroom, and my brother and I slept on cots in the living room. But I say that to say, my dad would save his money and buy at that time, the state-of-the-art equipment. So he had like one 1600 Technique turntable and one 1300 Technique turntable. And the pitch, for you DJs, the pitch, yeah, like the pitch wasn't a dial like this or a fader. It was like this knob that you would, the speed you would alter by twisting this knob. So he had the best equipment. Now my brother, understanding what it meant to be a hip hop DJ, took advantage of the fact that my dad had the equipment. And when my dad would go to work on our days off, like President's Day, whatever, we'd stay home. And then my brother would turn my dad's equipment on without my dad's permission and teach me everything that he was playing for me on those cassette tapes. And then at 5 o'clock, we'd put everything back exactly the way my dad left it, or else he would have not liked that. So So I gotta also give an honorable mention to my brother. But my most influential DJ, Bobby, throughout my whole career, it has to be Dr. Butcher. And Dr. Butcher in the, like, from, I would say, 1990 through 1992, or maybe even a little earlier, 1989 through like 1992, Dr. Butcher was one of the most, it still is, well-respected, popular DJs in the neighborhood of Queens where I grew up, Jackson Heights, Corona. He used to DJ for a rapper named Coogee Rap, and he was, I mean, yeah, he doesn't DJ anymore, but back then, man, like, he was just nasty. And my boy Juju from the Beatnuts, who, as a teenager I grew up with, knew how passionate I was about DJing, but also knew that I reached a plateau. Because I learned everything I could from my brother. I learned everything that I could from the DJs that I listened to on the radio, Chuck Chill Out, Red Alert, Marley Marl. I would teach myself stuff that I saw or heard from DJs like Cash Money, Steve D, Aladdin, Cutmaster Swift, the more technical sound DJs that would compete. And I would teach myself what they could do, and in my head I used to think, all right, I could do what Cash Money does, I could do what Steve D does, I could do what Aladdin does, I could do what Cutmaster Swift does. That goes back to that whole originality thing, that tenet. I used to think, well, as long as I could do what these guys could do, I'm good. And my boy Juju was like, yo man, I'm gonna take you to Dr. Butcher's house, you need to meet this guy. And I went there with the records and the routines that these DJs had already created, thinking I was gonna impress Dr. Butcher because I could do what Steve D does, etc., etc. He welcomes us in, you know, he sets up the turntables, and then I go on first, and I did like my best Steve D routine, I did my best Aladdin routine, my best Cash Money routine, and then he got on, and I always say he completely destroyed me because not only was he more technically sound than me, he was original. Everything that he did was a reflection of his personality, and he moved through the lens that he saw a DJ moving, not through Steve D's lens, or Aladdin's lens, or Cutmaster Swift's lens. Whereas that's how I was approaching the art, like, man, I'm good, and my friends tell me I'm good because I can do what everyone else does. So Dr. Butcher instilled in me from that day the importance of being original, being creative, and pushing yourself, not settling. Like, if you come up with a really dope routine, stop and think, how can I make that doper? And Dr. Butcher really instilled that in me, and I love that guy, man. He doesn't live in New York City anymore. He lives in Dallas, Texas now, but we talk often. Recently, myself and Mr. Sinister put out an EP, and he helped us with it. I still am in contact with him, and definitely Dr. Butcher's the guy that has influenced me the most with regards to DJing and in life.
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you. Any other questions? See a hand there in the back.
All right, so when we think in terms of DJs, there's different kinds of DJs that exist. But in terms of being a battle DJ, a hip-hop battle DJ, all right, when we look at fights or fighters in different disciplines, right? We look at Muhammad Ali as a heavyweight. You think Muhammad Ali can beat any heavyweight from any generation if given the opportunity, optimal conditions? When you look at martial artists, everybody looks at Bruce Lee, given his height, weight, whatever. You will say that Bruce Lee will find a way through creating the systems you come do to beat whomever his opponent is in the most effective way. Looking at that through the lens of battle DJs, in your opinion, who is the equivalent to Muhammad Ali or Bruce Lee in terms of battle DJs that, given us the opportunity, no matter what the era is, they will be able to beat almost every opponent or find a way to?
There's a few.
And before you answer the question,
Yeah.
is that Dart?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Dart, what up, Dart?
Yes, welcome, Dart. We can't see faces here because of the way the place is lit, but
That's a great question.
your persistence and energy is singular.
It's Dart-esque.
Yes.
Follow Dart on social media. He says a lot of cool shit. His content is really cool.
And he's got a new book.
He has a new book. He's a Boston native. All right, so to answer your question, there's a few DJs. First, I'm just gonna be egotistical and say I'd like to consider myself as one of those DJs. Me aside.
Present company excluded.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna say Craze. DJ Craze. Rock Raider, rest in peace. Steve D. Cash Money. And I'm gonna say Grand Mixer DST. Those five.
And what is it you're saying about those five?
I think that, I picked 5 DJs from different eras. Craze, I would say, and that's not to say that they're not relevant.
And are you saying these are the best DJs of all time, in your opinion?
Of their era, these are the DJs that I feel are the Muhammad Ali's, the Bruce Lee's of their craft. Okay. Exactly. Craze, he's more the late 90s, early 2000s era. Rock Raider is the early 90s, mid 90s era. Steve D is the late 80s, early 90s era. Cash Money is the mid 80s, late 80s era. And Grand Mixer DST is the early 80s era. So I started with the 2000s and I went back to the early 80s. Those DJs, for me, if you go on YouTube for the DJs here, go on YouTube, search Grand Mixer DST. He was the guy that we consider the first turntablist, the first guy to literally take scratching the way Grand Wizard Theodore and Grandmaster Flash were doing, but articulate the movements in a way that made you feel like he was playing the turntable like an instrument. And this is 1982.
Rocket, you kind of changed everything.
Yes.
I saw the video for Rocket.
Google Rocket Herbie Hancock and listen to the scratches on the word fresh. What he does is amazing. Cash Money was the first DJ to win the only 2 sanctioned battles at the time. The DMC, which stands for Disco Mixing Club, and the NMS battle, which stands for the New Music Seminar Battle. And Cash Money was the first DJ to unite both titles.
Wow.
Then you have Steve D, who redefined beat juggling. Beat juggling, maybe I'll get to demonstrate it for them at the end of this lecture. Beat juggling is the ability to take a drum beat and then manually, in real time, remix the drum beat. It's something that words don't do justice. Like, you have to see it for you to appreciate it. And Steve D, for me, is like the original king of that style of DJing. Rock Raider, I mean, man, he was my best friend. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2009. But man, the mark that he made on this art form, and talking about resourcefulness, Rock Raider, when he started DJing, he didn't own turntables. So I'm gonna say that again. When he made the decision to start DJing, he didn't own turntables. So he would go to friends' houses and practice, and then go home and sit around until he was invited back to that friend's house with turntables to practice more.
It's amazing.
When he got his first set of turntables, they weren't these turntables here that you see on that screen, these are the DJ standard of turntables. These are the Technique 1200 turntables. And that's what the majority of DJs start off with. When these are direct drive turntables, so there's a motor that helps the platter move. So when you're scratching and let go of the record, the platter moving helps you to release the song and the song play the way it's supposed to sound, at the speed it was recorded. Raider started off with belt-driven turntables. Belt-driven turntables have a belt inside the motor, and when you go to scratch the record, the platter stops moving, similar to scratching on top of that big piece of
Rubber mat.
So when you let go of the record, it drags in and then it picks up speed after a second or two. And Raider would start it off on those belt-driven turntables, and I would go to his house and he would use them like they were 1200s. Tenacity, resourcefulness, you know, and Raider's a teenager not realizing that he's being tenacious. He just wants to have fun and figure this out. You know?
And be great.
And be great, right, exactly. Regardless of the gear, regardless of whether or not he has a laptop or a mixer with pads on it. All these techniques that I teach the students here at MIT and that I teach students that come to my house were created before any of these flashy pads or effects. All of these techniques were created before laptops were even a thought. They were created by some kid playing around with this turntable, like, wow, what can I do with this? Like, how can I make this sound with my hand on top of the record? And Raider, to me, Rock Raider epitomizes that. And then Craze, man, Craze, think about it, think about it. I just talked about all these DJs, Dart, like Raider, Steve D, Cash Money, Grammix with DST. So you have like, just a lineage, different eras of like monster, nasty DJs. But then Craze comes onto the scene, and with the mindset of Raider's dope, Steve D's dope, Cash Money's dope, Grammix with DST is dope. I could be doper than all those guys. Like, to have that mindset, and when you see Craze, that's his mentality. Like, no one can fuck with me. No one can mess with me. Like, I'm the illest dude. And that to me is dope. You know, like, no matter who came before you, you show respect. You show respect, but you don't let that stop you from deciding there's more you could do with this turntable. It doesn't stop with what Rock Raider did, or with what Cash Money did, or Steve D, or Grammix or DST, or the guys before them, Flash, Theodore. And that's why we're here, because there were DJs like myself and others that kept pushing the art form forward. So for the students that I have here that I've been teaching for the last 2 weeks, or the last week, that are considering buying gear and immersing themselves further into this art form, know that there's still more you can do. Like, what I've taught you, we're just touching the beginning stages of infinite stages of what you could do with this art form.
Do we have any other questions, comments, suggestions, or complaints? Yes.
Social media, what's the best thing and the worst thing about it for you?
Great question.
Social media is a gift and a curse. So the gift regarding social media is that there are DJs in towns that DJing isn't popular, and they want to connect with other DJs. They want to be able to share their creativity with others. And how cool is it that you could record yourself performing a routine, upload it to Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, blast your friends, and then their friends will blast it, and within hours, you'll have 100, 200, 300, 400 views.
Wow.
That's cool.
It just collapses time and distance.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It collapses time and distance, and that's a beautiful thing. For me, social media has been amazing, because a lot of times, for example, I'll be at home training with a student, and I'll get to record that training session, upload it to YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see 20-minute long sessions with students that I've edited. You know, the sessions are actually an hour, but I'll edit a video down to like 20 minutes, and you see the student start from scratch, excuse the pun, literally, and I'm telling them, you know, like, take your record hand, put it here at 9 o'clock, move the record back and forth, or here, like, apply this technique of backspinning to both turntables, and then gradually, over the course of those 20 minutes, you see them, like, get the movements down, and then I'll get an email from someone like, that looked cool, I want to learn too, because they saw that a novice could get it. And it gives them that confidence to then reach out to me and hit me up for lessons. social media in that sense is amazing. But on the flip side, I feel that what ends up happening a lot of times with social media is it's like money. Like if you make too much money, it's counterfeit, or I should say the value of it decreases. The more money you make, the value decreases.
Even to you making it.
Right, exactly. So it's like, because everybody wants to be a DJ now and capitalize on the popularity of what it is to play music and alter music the way I do and the way DJs before me have. Now you have people that get into it literally just to get followers on IG. That's it. And that bothers me because it's like you're exploiting the art form, you know? Like, I know I have, like, sometimes people hit me up and they inbox me questions, or maybe they'll try to diss me or whatever the case is. And then I'll go to their page just to see who is it that I'm interacting with. And they'll have pictures of themselves, like, on the turntables, but they won't have any video. Or no video of them actually DJing out. And those are the posers, those are the people that you know, they're like, yeah, they're like, all right, they just kind of, they want to create like this image and like this illusion that they're true DJs, but they're actually just guys that, or girls or whoever, that just want attention. You know what I mean? So social media is great, but it's also bad. And it is what it is, but that's just the nature of life, right? You can't have one without the other. So when you visit my page and you see the content, it makes you appreciate this art form more.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions, or complaints? Yes.
So, to the average person that might not be able to differentiate between like a person that you just described that just wants to DJ for popularity and a DJ that's passionate about it and that's been really dedicated to it for a long time, how do you kind of teach them to differentiate the differences between the people, or I guess to appreciate? I guess some people can't even appreciate it.
And just repeat the question, please, Ron. I think the question was, how do you differentiate between people who just want to do it to...
Yeah, to the average viewer who does it.
Between someone, the average viewer and someone who's really passionate about it and wants to do it for the right reason?
How do you differentiate, or how do you make someone appreciate the difference? Right. So it basically comes down to what I'm doing here today. Is you get out there and you talk about this art form. You know, I'm not shy about like throwing up a post and writing like 10 paragraphs underneath the post and giving you context about what you're watching. Like you rarely will you, especially if it's about DJing or like an era of DJing that I really respect. If I post a video or a picture, I'm gonna give you history on that picture or history on that video so that you can appreciate the difference between just the person that just, hey, wants you to be like, hit like underneath their post because they're a DJ, and the person that just wants you to appreciate the art and the genius that DJs approach this machine with. You know what I mean? So talk about it. That's how you help people appreciate the difference between just the guy that wants followers and the person that wants to keep this art form moving forward.
So Rob, as we wrap up, I want to ask you one final question, and this requires some context, so I hope you'll just indulge me for a moment. First tell me about your 5 tenets for approaching DJing. It made me think of Miyamoto Musashi's book of the 5 Rings. Now, Musashi was a 17th century samurai, and probably the greatest in history. He's a man who killed over 60 opponents in hand-to-hand combat. And after he did that, he sat down, wrote his thoughts on warfare, then died in a cave, presumably in his sleep. But those writings became the book of the 5 Rings. And when I started to read Musashi, when I started to read his text, I started to read it and then I had to put it down. I couldn't go through it because every single sentence almost, and certainly paragraph, was like it was like a fractal. It was just like endless depths of meaning in what he said. So one of the things that he said that that really hit me was there's a place in the book where he says, to learn the sword, study the guitar. To learn the sword, study the guitar. And what he's talking about is not the musicianship that samurai adore, but he's talking about the interconnectedness of all human practice. That if you become deep in anything, you can become deep in other things. And were he alive today, I can imagine that Musashi would say, to learn the sword, study the turntables. I can easily imagine that. However, the quote by him that I have probably most integrated into my thinking as a fundamental truth is this one. And if you will, I'd like you to apply it to your own work, and it's this. You can only fight the way you practice. You can only fight the way you practice. How does that connect, in your mind, to the art of being who you are as a DJ?
This is how I'll answer that question. Great question, by the way. Thank you. So I entered my first competition in 1991 after 7 months of training with Dr. Butcher. We were training like monks at his house. I go to his house Monday through Friday. Remember, at the time, his girlfriend lived with him, and she would stomp out of the room like, why is this guy here again? Like, she would hate it when I would go over there. And I couldn't blame her because like I'd go over there and stay there for like hours training with Drew. And 7 months we went hard, entered my first battle, and I placed third. And the very next day, I started practicing for that same battle that I placed third in.
For the next year.
For the next year. So the point that I'm making is, when you train, you're developing yourself. You're developing yourself. And not just, when you're training as a DJ, obviously you're developing your technique, your touch on the turntable, how you hear things, but you're developing yourself too. Like you're who you are. Like, you came in third, are you gonna stop? Are you gonna quit? Or are you gonna become steadfast in your goal and do what you have to do to accomplish, which is winning that battle, you know? So training and practicing reveals who you are. And I have students, I'm gonna be candid with you, that don't train. They think, well, I'll just wait till I go to Rob's house and have him teach me this technique, and then by the time we're done and I leave his house, I'll be better and I'll know how to do this thing. And more often than not, that's not the case, you know? And it's like you have to put in the time, you have to put in the hours, you have to train, you have to practice, you have to develop yourself. And that goes for any discipline, or it goes for students. You're in school, you've got to study, you've got to read the books, you've got to do the work in order to get that A. So training is just so important. It's the most important aspect of anything, is developing, because as you develop, you're finding yourself and you're learning about your weaknesses and your strengths and your triggers and the obstacles or the fear, like having fear of success or fear of failure and how that affects you. And as you work through all those things, you're becoming who you are. You know what I mean? So training is the most important thing, for sure.
Rob Swift is a 2020 visiting artist here at MIT through CAS, the Center for Arts, Science, and Technology. Rob Swift, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Next week we have a concert.
We do.
Let them know.
Yes, the concert is called The Wave Function Collapses. It will be taking place here a week from today, Thursday at 8 o'clock. And this is the debut of our 7-person scratch battle DJ composite, I guess you might say, Harbinger. And as well, it's going to, the program is going to open with a performance by Rob Swift and Mr. Sinister, who together form a group called The Odd Couple. And they're going to be doing a set from their new album, the title of which is
Yeah, our set isn't necessarily songs from the album.
Ah, okay.
It's just what you would catch us
Live
doing.
improvisation.
Yeah, just cutting it up and remixing songs. It's gonna be crazy. And then we have the students from MIT doing a quick little
That's
demo
right.
in the beginning, so it's gonna be fun.
But don't forget also, tonight, at 8 o'clock, we're going to allow people to come in here and watch our rehearsal session with Harbinger. It just occurred to me, I don't know if we told the guys this already.
Well, they know now.
They know now.
And I suggest for those that don't have to be anywhere at 8, even if you just come for like 20, 30 minutes, it's a cool experience to see what happens. Basically, you'll get to see what happens in the bedroom of a DJ, how they come up with ideas, how they communicate with each other or within themselves, how they kind of figure out a way to land a scratch better. It's a cool glimpse into the creative process of what this art form is.
We're asking you to, of course, please leave behind any cell phones or cameras and no social
Top
media.
secret.
It's not top secret, but it's something that's we're rehearsing, and so we're trying to get better. But we would appreciate your attention if you'd like to stay. Thank you very much for being here today. We really are honored by your presence and that you sat through this hour and a half of listening to us talk about why we do what we do. Thank you very, very much. And we especially want to thank our hosts here at MIT, the good people at CAST, for making this opportunity possible.
Big shout out to Susan.
Yes, Susan Wilson, the wizard in the back. And Ronnie Del Flores and everybody else who's getting down for us. Thank you so much.